Greetings. The last time we were, unfortunately, witnessing the slaughter of the innocent in Judea, in Bethlehem, and in other little places, I guess. Now, today, the Holy Family goes to Matarea. So that's the subtext. The Holy Family goes to Matarea. The Holy Family left Heliopolis on account of the persecution they there endured, and because Joseph could not obtain work. They took byroads and went still further into the country, journeying southward toward Memphis. Passing through a little town not far from Heliopolis, they halted in the forecourt of an open pagan temple and sat down to rest. When, all of a sudden, down tumbled the idol and fell to pieces. It had the head of an ox with triple horns and several cavities in the body to receive the sacrifices that were to be consumed. At once arose a tumult among the pagan priests. They seized the Holy Family and threatened them with punishment. But one of them represented to his companions, as they were consulting what measures to take, that the best thing for them to do would be to commend themselves to the God of these strangers. For he remembered, he said, what plagues had come upon their forefathers when they had persecuted those people, and that upon the night of their departure from Egypt, the firstborn in every house had died. These words were effectual, and the Holy Family was left in peace. The pagan priest who had spoken them went soon after to Matarea with several of his people, and there joined the Holy Family and the Jewish community. Mary and Joseph next went to Troia, a place on the western side of the Nile, opposite Memphis. It was large and very dirty. They had some idea of remaining there, but they were not well received. Indeed, they could get not even a drink of water, much less a few dates, for which they begged. Memphis lay west of the Nile, which was at that point very broad and contained some islands. A part of the city lay also on this side of the river, and, in Pharaoh's time, a large palace with gardens and high towers, from which Pharaoh's daughter often looked out on the country around. I saw the spot upon which, among the tall bulrushes, the child Moses was found. Memphis was like three cities in one, for it was built on both sides of the Nile, and appeared also to be connected with Babylon, a city lying eastward of the river and nearer to its mouth. In Pharaoh's time, the country in general around the Nile between Heliopolis, Babylon, and Memphis was so covered with high stone dams and buildings, and so linked together by canals, that those three cities presented the appearance of one large city. But at the time of the Holy Family, all were separate, immense wastes intervening between them. The holy travelers proceeded northward from Troia along the river toward Babylon, a dirty, low-lying city. Between the Nile and Babylon, they took the route by which they had come and returned a distance of about 2 hours. Buildings and ruins were scattered here and there along the whole road. After crossing a small branch of the river or a canal, they reached Matarea, which was built upon a tongue of land jutting out into the Nile. The river bathed the city on both sides. It was in general a wretched enough place, built only of date wood and solid mud covering with rushes. Joseph found plenty of work here. He built more substantial houses of wickerwork, with galleries around them, to which the occupants could go for air and recreation. Here the Holy Family dwelt in a dark vaulted cave that lay in a retired spot on the land side, not far from the gate by which they had entered. Joseph, as at Heliopolis, built a light screen before it. One of the idols in a little temple fell at their arrival, and later all the others did the same. The people were in consternation, but one of the priests quieted them by recalling to their remembrance the plagues of Egypt. After some time, as a little community of Jews and converted pagans gathered around the Holy Family, the priests gave over to them the little temple whose idol had fallen at their coming, and Joseph turned it into a synagogue. Joseph was like the patriarch of the community. He taught them how to sing the Psalms correctly, for Judaism in those parts had greatly deteriorated. Only the poorest Jews dwelt here in Babylon, and that in the most wretched dens and caves. But in the Jewish settlement between On and the Nile, they were numerous and better off. They had a regular temple, for they had lapsed into frightful idolatry. They had a golden calf, a figure with an ox's head, around which were ranged other representations of animals like polecats or ferrets. These last mentioned animals defend people against the crocodile. They had, too, an imitation of the Ark of the Covenant and horrible things on it. The idolatry they practiced was of the most shameful kind, and in a subterranean hall they carried on the most infamous wickedness, deluded by the hope that from it their Messiah should come forth. They were exceedingly stiff-necked and would not be converted. Later on, however, many of them left that settlement and went to Babylon, about 2 hours distant. In doing so, they could not, on account of the numerous dikes and canals, travel by a straight road. They had to make a detour around On. These Jews of the land of Goshen had already made the acquaintance of the Holy Family, while the latter abode in On. Mary, while there, had done various kinds of work for them, such as knitting and embroidering covers and bands. She would never undertake works for vanity or extravagance, but only useful things and religious vestments. I saw women bringing work to her, which they wanted done in accordance with the requirement of vanity and fashion, and Mary returning it, although so much in need of the pay she would have received for it. The women mocked and scornfully derided her. The Holy Family at first suffered greatly from want. Good water could not be had, and wood failed. The inhabitants used only dry grass and reeds for their cooking. The Holy Family generally ate cold food. Joseph had plenty to do. He improved the poor huts for the people, but they treated him almost like a slave, giving him for his labor only what they themselves thought proper. Sometimes he brought home something as a remuneration for his work, and sometimes he brought nothing. The people were very unskillful in building their huts. They had no wood, excepting here and there a log or two, and even if they had wood, they had no tools to shape it, for they had only knives of bone and stone. Joseph had brought the most necessary tools with him. The Holy Family was soon settled somewhat comfortably. They had little stools and tables, wicker screens, and a well-ordered fireplace also. The Egyptians ate sitting flat on the ground. In the wall of Mary's sleeping place I saw a recess that Joseph had hollowed out, and in it was Jesus' little bed. Mary's couch was beside it, and I have often seen her by night kneeling in prayer to God before that little bed. Joseph slept in another enclosed corner. The oratory of the Holy Family was in a passage outside. Joseph and the Blessed Virgin had separate places in it, And Jesus, too, had his little corner where he prayed sitting, standing, or kneeling. There was a kind of little altar before the Blessed Virgin's place, a small table covered with red and white. The table was like a leaf on hinges and could be let down from or put up against the wall. When let down, it disclosed a shelf on the wall itself, and on the shelf were various objects, among them something that was held as sacred. I saw little bushes and pots formed like chalices, a withered though still whole branch, on top of which was the lily that had blossomed in Joseph's hand when he had been chosen by lot in the temple for Mary's spouse. And something like fine, thin white sticks that were placed crosswise in the rounded part of the recess. The blossoming lily branch was at the top of Joseph's staff. It was stuck in a box about 1.5 inches in diameter. The little sticks that were arranged crosswise were also in a box, a transparent one. There were about 5 of these little white sticks of the thickness of a coarse straw. They were crossed and bound in the middle to a kind of little sheaf. But one pays very little attention to such things when in vision. One's thoughts are chiefly intent upon the holy personages there presented. I saw that the Holy Family had to subsist on fruits and bad water. They had been so long without good water that Joseph resolved to saddle his ass, take his leathern bottle, and start for the balsam spring in the desert in order to get some. But the Blessed Virgin was told in prayer by an angelic apparition that she should seek and find a spring at the back of their present abode. I saw her going over the hill in which they dwelt to a deep, vacant lot that lay at some distance between ruined walls. A large old tree stood on that ground. Mary had in her hand a rod provided with a little scoop, such as the people of that country commonly carry on journeys. She stuck it into the ground near the tree, and a beautiful clear stream of water instantly gushed forth. She hurried back joyfully to call Joseph, who soon removed the upper crust of earth and disclosed a well which had long ago been dug out and lined with masonry, but which for some time had been choked up and dry. He soon restored it and paved it around very beautifully with stones. At the side of the well toward which Mary had approached lay a great stone almost like an altar. I think it was used for that purpose in former times. The Blessed Virgin, after that, often washed Jesus' clothes and bands there and dried them in the sun. The well remained unknown and was used only by the Holy Family until Jesus had grown large enough to go on a little errands and even to bring water for his mother. Once I saw him taking other children to the well and giving them a drink of the water, which he scooped up in a hollow, crooked leaf. The little ones told this to their parents, and so the well became known. Others now began to go to it, though it remained principally in the use of the Jews. Even in the time of the Holy Family, it possessed healing properties for the leprous. Later, when a little chapel had been built over the dwelling of the Holy Family, there was near the high altar a flight of steps leading down to their first abode. There I saw the spring. It was surrounded by dwellings, and its waters used for the cure of leprosy and similar diseases. Even the Turks kept a light burning in the little chapel and dreaded being overtaken by some misfortune if they neglected it. But the last I saw of the spring, it was lying solitary, surrounded only by trees. I saw the boy Jesus bringing water from the well for his mother for the first time. Mary was in prayer when the boy slipped to the well with a bottle and brought it back full of water. Mary was unspeakably affected when she saw him coming back with the water. She knelt down and implored him never to do that again, for he might fall into the well. But Jesus replied that he would take care and that he wanted to render her that service whenever she needed it. If Joseph happened to be working at a little distance from home and left a tool lying behind him, I used to see the boy Jesus running after it and bringing it to him. The boy noticed everything. I think the joy that Mary and Joseph experienced on his account must have outweighed all their sufferings. Though perfectly childlike, he was very wise, skilled in everything. He knew and understood everything. I often saw Mary and Joseph filled with unspeakable admiration. When the boy Jesus took to their owners the covers embroidered or woven by his mother, who hoped to receive bread in return for her work, I often saw him teased at first and consequently sad. But after a while, the Holy Family was very much loved by the people. I saw their children giving Jesus figs and dates, while many of their elders sought the Holy Family for help and consolation. All in trouble said, "Let us go to the Jewish child." I saw the boy going on all kinds of errands, even to a Jewish town a mile distant, to get bread in exchange for his mother's work. The wild animals, numerous on his route, did him no harm. On the contrary, they and even serpents showed him affection. Once I saw him going with other children to the Jewish town. He was weeping bitterly over the degradation of the Jews. When he went for the first time alone to that Jewish town, he wore, also for the first time, the brown robe woven by Mary. It was trimmed around the border with yellowish flowers. I saw him kneeling and praying on the way. 2 angels appeared to him and spoke of Herod's death, but he said nothing of it to his parents. End of reading. Okay, so notes. Let me open them up here. A few big ones. Okay, so notice how the Holy Family's considerable talents, especially Mary and Jesus, could have gone towards a generation of wealth. Like the rich women gave Mary work to do, but she turned it away. So instead, what they did was they served a greater purpose. These days, we are so miserly, especially in North America, I find. Catholics, Protestants, Orthodox even. We sell ourselves online, or the term is grifting. People say, well, this program is sponsored by such and such, or producing these videos is a time investment, and I have 10, 15 children. I have to take time away from them in order to make money, and so my time is money. And Protestants have taken this to the point of ridiculousness. That's why I blocked all of, like, when you're using YouTube, you keep getting recommendations, right? And if you want to take the Protestants out, you have to purge them from your history and just don't recommend channel to everyone you know is Protestant in order to cut them out of your feed, because they've taken this to the point of ridiculousness. They're good orators, but they talk out their arses and they make money because people think they're Christians and people throw money at them. They think this is a working model for being because they're American first and Christian second. So Protestants take this to the point of ridiculousness. They just outright make careers out of it, as if their preaching is some sort of trade they're honing. Catholics ought to know better. It's ironic that we in North America should be so rich and yet have so little understanding of what trade means to God, because it's like this miserly behavior is built into our natures. In Europe, they sort of have this culture where they spend most of their money accessorizing in order to look rich. Like they'll buy the best cars they can possibly afford, even though they might not have a penny to their name after all their payments, because reputation means that much to them. In North America, some of us commit the worst crime of just hoarding property and assets and not putting them to the service of God. We're just hoarding wealth, hoarding property, hoarding assets. And when you're not putting them to the service of God, it's just pure greed. But they call it capitalism. It's not, and don't mistake me, this is not a criticism of capitalism. This is a criticism of Catholics who engage in hoarding and miserly behavior. Capitalism is just the result of multiple people building a culture. And the culture can't be criticized. It's the individual people that have to be criticized, and then the culture will eventually disappear. So, because this behavior is so normalized in our society, because people are inflected by the culture, even though they should be advancing in their spiritual lives, rather than, take advice from a priest rather than a lay, because they're taking advice from lay, even a lot of prominent and intelligent Catholic podcasters or online brands, even some priests are profiting. So again, I will say this. It's not wrong to make money off a trade in order to support yourself or your family, but that's a trade. Joseph did not grift. He did carpentry. Jesus and Mary betook to little tasks, but they did not exploit themselves for a financial gain. They used their arts and talents to serve others rather than to trade with others. Now, there's a singer I watch. She puts on concerts at her Christmas concerts and whatever, and I listen to them because it's nice that she gave her pretty voice to the service of singing her Byzantine hymns. But I know she also sings professionally, but she separates the two of them, right? In the U.S., and I enjoy that. I enjoy that people can use their talents and give them to God, at least give a part of it to God, like Joachim and Anne, St. Joachim, St. Anne. They give a third of what they get to God, right? I appreciate that. This is what we should all be doing as Catholics. If we have a remarkable skill, we should be giving at least a third of our time to God, the time allotted to our souls. Like we build up for the flesh, we build up for the societies and for others, for our minds, we learn, and then we build for the soul, right? So we have to use what we do for the soul. In the U.S., this kind of behavior, this grifting, they officially term it as building a brand where the names become like the company. And it's like, oh, you know my brand instead of, oh, you know my name. I think the safest thing to do is simply segregate your Catholic affairs from your non-Catholic affairs. Like this singer, even though she's Orthodox, she can sing her Byzantine hymns and then do other professional music on the side, maybe on a different channel. And so you use your Catholic affairs to do Catholicism rather than blending the two in some weird amalgam. Now think of it this way. J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter, an immensely popular series. She decided to pen other novels. Now, I don't know if she did it under a pseudonym or not, but it doesn't matter because everyone knew it was her. Of course, the publishing company would have wanted everyone to know it was her because there's more profit involved. Now, I don't know, so just on her sheer branch, sold a lot of books, even though the writing may not have been the greatest. I kind of feel for her in a certain regard because you have to be known for your skill. You want every one of your works to merit in and of itself, known for its craftsmanship, rather than simply being merited by your brand. Catholicism is a brand of its own, and we contribute to it. But any sense of self-elevation we get from it is purely accidental. I don't really want you all to know my name other than that. I am Marty, kind of like the first line of Moby Dick. I am Ishmael. I write, but if my writing was really that good, my books would have merited attention, but as it stands, they do not. I mean, maybe it's because we're living in a billboard society and I refuse to whore myself, but that's another subject and altogether. However, if I ever use this channel, which I'm using to read these notes, these and Catherine Emmerich things and other Catholic ventures, to do anything non-Catholic or for personal gain, slap me right in the face, would you? Because YouTube is turning into a hellscape of billboards and cutout collages. Now, if there was any other viable site, you'd use that, but YouTube is still the best one. I know Census TV came out, but I found that to be too tiny of a corner on the internet. And then you have Rumble, but Rumble, I was putting videos on there for a while, and I was like, this is a site for profit. It's really a site for right-wingers, right? And I'm not really a right-winger, I'm Catholic. So we're using YouTube, and a lot of us are stuck here. So anyways, YouTube is turning into a hellscape of billboards and cutout collages on videos and clickbait titles like St. Padre Pio said you need to do this to get into heaven. Oh, what is this? I gotta go click. And this is what we call an ugly society. It's like that picture. I'll probably post it in the video. You know, this is capitalism, where you just see like a boulevard full of billboards and McDonald's and stuff like that. It is ugly. And don't get me started on purely AI TTS channels. If you see these videos, report them for spamming and fraud, because it's easy for some third world foreigner to harvest clicks using Catholic content and earn unjust cash just from the curiosities of our hapless brothers and sisters. So, anyways, next note. Don't grift. Next note. So, there were a few Jewish denizens of Egypt back then, though today we would call them expats, which you'll see going to you'll see them if you're traveling to Far East Asian countries. I've heard of them. I've never actually gone to Korea. I almost went to teach, but I don't know. I didn't feel like God wanted me to go there. But anyways, if you were teaching in Korea, you'll find expat communities, people who are more accustomed to Western culture. So they form little ghettos. Well, I guess Jews had formed ghettos here. Now, God commanded the Jews to also build what was called sanctuary cities for multiple purposes, like that. Like to have aliens live in and do trades and whatnot. But nowadays, we do get ghettos. And so Mary and Joseph had to search out Jewish ghettos in Egypt. Notice that they didn't just go live among the inhabitants of Egypt. They found the Jewish ghettos. Shows that God is indeed selective about his company. It's something that a lot of V2 Catholics would like to deny these days, that, oh, well, God wants everyone to be treated as equals and neighbors. No. That is not the way God ever operated, even in this text. We see child Jesus still wants to go live among the Jews. You know why? Because they're nearer to him. Now, the Jews were the children and the Gentiles were the dogs. I'm referencing the event of the Gospels where the Syrophoenician woman who asked Jesus to heal her child was replied by Jesus, "The meal given to the children is not meant for the dogs." To which she replied, "Yes, but the dogs still get to eat the crumbs that fall from the table." And because she accurately depicted herself as a dog, she knew what she was. She had faith. Jesus gave to her, because she recognized in herself that she was not of equal status to the Israelites at the time. Now, since the status has changed, but I'll get into that. So, he did her the favor of healing her daughter. I think it was her daughter. Anyways, it could have been her son. Anyways, if God showed up on earth today as Christ, he won't in this human form. He'll show up in divine glory or whatever. But let's suppose he did, just for the sake of hypotheticals. He would spend the most time, he would immediately appear among the hardcore Catholics because they would be the one nearest to him among the church militant, which is the people living on this planet. Because remember, the church triumphant are the saints in heaven, church militant are the people on this planet, no church suffering are the poor souls in purgatory. Now, a lot of people are confused, thinking that the Jews are still nearest to him, especially Protestants, so they exalt the state of Israel. Pope Pius X, however, vehemently opposed the state of Israel before it happened. And Our Lady of All Nations also gave us a caution about Israel 3 years before it was founded, since the message was dated in 1945. She said that God had turned a blind eye upon them, onto them, from them. And then she saw Cain slaying Abel and the jawbone of a donkey lying on the ground. Now, as we know from these visions, Cain did not slay Abel with the jawbone of a donkey. However, I have since discerned that the jawbone of a donkey happens to be the shape of the country of Israel on the map, or half of one. So they are exiled and marked, they bear the curse of Cain. They are exiled and marked with a curse. See Genesis 4. The signs were also of in the Old and New Testament. For example, the curtain going rent in the temple upon Jesus' death links to when Saul tore Samuel's cloak, and Samuel declaring to Saul, "You have torn yourself away from God." Because the Jews had committed deicide, because they slew Abel, they tore themselves away from God. They did not do as he commanded. They did not adore the Christ. They killed him. Therefore, they cut themselves off from the covenant. We Catholics we're trying to tear ourselves away from God. Now, I think of this quote, and I won't get it exactly because I'm not an exact quoter, but Napoleon said to a cardinal, I think one time, he said, "Don't you know that I have the power to come in and flatten Rome and the Vatican and to destroy Catholicism?" And the cardinal famously retorted, saying, "We, the cardinals, the bishops, have been trying to destroy our faith for 2,000 years, and we have not succeeded. Little will you be able to do." So we as Catholics are still trying to tear ourselves away from God, it seems, in modern times. But luckily, some of us still adore Our Lady. If you adore Our Lady as St. John did, you may just live to stand at the foot of the cross. Anyways, that's the end of the reading, or that's the end of it. Ave Maria.